Hello and welcome to our webinar for July. Is technology really growing your firm? It's a very big question that we're going to cover off today. So very happy to have with me today the wonderful Rob Nixon and Ron Leash. So before we do get started, just pop into the question box just to make sure that I can hear everyone, just where you're from, what state are you coming from today? Just a quick yes and where you're from so that we can make sure that you can all hear us, and then we will get started and into it. So wonderful from New South Wales, good state of origin game coming tonight, Queensland, Victoria, Adelaide. So we've pretty much got all states covered. New Zealand as well, welcome from New Zealand. So welcome to everyone that is on the webinar today. So we'll get right into it. So today we're going to be talking about technology to effectively engage your clients. We're going to talk about future-proofing your workforce for true growth over the next decade. And we're going to talk about how your firm can earn 1 million plus profit per partner and some of the areas around that. Now, the first bit that we're going to talk about today is around technology. And we've got Ron Leash from BGL, the founding director of BGL, to talk about technology and why this is so critical in my eyes is that we talk to firms on a daily basis around how are they set up with their technology. And what we find in most cases is that a lot of firms are either not using the technology effectively or have it, but it's not fully set up, or in some cases, they still don't utilize and leverage technology. So technology can be a real enabler or it can be a real prohibitor within firms. So today I'm really excited to have Ron talk about this. I know that Ron's been launching a lot of AI and a lot of what I call futuristic technology. So before we get into Ron's session, we're just going to quickly run a quick poll. So we're going to pop this poll up for less than a minute. How helpful is technology in growing your firm? So you'll see the poll pop up. If you can just quickly answer this. 1, it's very helpful. Our IT stack is used efficiently. 2, we have an IT stack but have not maximized all of it. And we're going to run through this. So we're seeing some of the results. Option 3, Option 2, we're seeing it pretty much skewed across. I'm not sure, Ron, if you're seeing this as well, and Rob, but 42% saying they have an IT stack, but it's not maximized. I actually thought that would be quite higher. We've got about 13% of the listeners saying we're learning just now about it, which is an interesting one. 13% are saying that we've just started to build out our IT stack. So the majority are sitting between the two options being we have an IT stack but have not maximized all of it, and we use some software but we need to learn more. So we'll just close off that poll, and I'm going to ask both Ron and Rob to comment on this. And Ron, we might start with you. Does that surprise you, the results of that poll?
Look, not really. We see clients, first, good afternoon, everybody. Look, we see clients using 20 to 30% of their software in each application, let alone all the applications that they have. I think one of the big problems today is that there is just so much choice in what you can use, and people need to make decisions on what's best for their practice, and maybe often they just don't know which is the best solution for their practice. So the other side of it is I don't think a lot of people involve necessarily the people in their business in selecting the IT that they use. It's often decisions made by partners or by principals. So those statistics probably don't surprise me at all.
How about you, Rob? I'll be interested to see your opinion because you obviously coach a lot of accounting firms around the globe. Does that surprise you?
Not at all. You always get your 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, with 20% right into it. But I would hope and wish and desire that accounting firms just look at every single application they can with the view of, does this thing, this app, this full service thing, whatever it is, actually help me minimize time, help me be more efficient, so I've got more capacity. And some of the products do, some don't. So not surprised at all there.
Yeah, and it's a great point, and I suppose something that we see every day, particularly talking to accounting firms, is that often, and this is a challenge I'll put out to everyone on the webinar today, is how many of you have actually done an audit of all the technology that you actually are subscribed to and paying for? and how many of those softwares are you actually maximizing and leveraging to their full extent. We talk to a lot of firms when they come to us where they may be using a certain aspect of their technology, but it's not all set up. And part of having their global or offshore team is to actually get that technology set up so that they can maximize it to its full extent. So I'm going to hand over to Ron now to talk a lot more about technology. You build technology as a business, Ron, so really interested to hear, I suppose, you talk about the importance of it, the efficiencies that can come from it, the automation, and ultimately what the benefit to the clients are because of all of this.
Yeah, look, thanks, Nick. Look, I suppose we're both a user of technology as well as a supplier of technology. So I suppose I can talk from sort of two perspectives. But looking at, I suppose, from an accounting firm as a starting point, how important is it to have the right technology stack, and how important is it to have that technology integrated? Because at the moment, in a lot of cases, we're still working the way we were 5 and 10 and 15 years ago, where we're using this application for this and this application for that, but nothing talks to each other. So I think it is important that you get your technology stack right, because if you don't get your technology right, you're going to find it hard to compete both now and in the future. We look at what's happening in our industry and our part of the industry, and the move to automation and a whole lot of other things is enormous. I'll come back to those in more detail in a moment, but it really is telling us a whole lot of things. The first thing, I suppose, that we found from why is this so important these days is accountants need to have some realizations. And I think the first realization they need to have is they're no longer the purveyors of information. In the past, if somebody wanted to know something, they called you up. What do they do today? If they want to know something, they ask Mr. Google. So no longer are you the guys that know or have all the answers, because often your clients are just checking with you to make sure that you're giving them the same answer Mr. Google's giving them. The second part is your clients know what you know. They've just got access to so much information. They know who your competitors are. Whereas in the past, if you go back 10 years ago or 20 years ago, to find out who your direct competitors were meant walking around the streets looking at the boards on the buildings. These days, it's so easy to find out who they are. But probably more important is, if you're not doing it, your competitors have got newsletters. And your clients are getting information from them all the time. So it is really important that you focus on making sure that you get your business in a position where you're the first port of call, where your clients call you and they're not necessarily looking at Mr. Google. So it really means you can't be an ostrich anymore. You used to be able to be an ostrich, but you can't really. And all of this leads to a whole heap of efficiencies that you can get in your business. And if you think about the way that your systems operate at the moment, does your practice management software talk to your tax software, talk to your SMSF software, talk to your corporate compliance software, talk to your investment software, talk to everything else in the business? Because that's how you get the efficiencies, by having everything integrated together. And one of the things that we see a lot of is that people just are not at the point where they are integrated at the moment. That needs to change, and it needs to change reasonably quickly, I think. Nick, can we go to the next slide? Hello? Wonderful. So I've got at the side that some of you may have seen before about laggards, and where do you sit in terms of the where the technology's at? Are you an innovator? Are you an early adopter in the early majority, late majority of the laggards? I look at the industry that we're in, and probably more the SMSF industry. We've crossed that point at the top now, and we're into the late majority. Because if we look at the numbers of funds that are sitting in the cloud, it's somewhere getting close to 400,000 out of 600,000. So we've got 2/3 in the cloud. Got a third to go, and I don't think we'll ever get 100%, but we'll get pretty close. So we're heading well into that late majority. So those of you that are still doing your SMSF work on desktop software, whether it's ours, whether it's someone else's, whether you're using general ledgers, whether you're using spreadsheets, really with the way the world is going today, you really need to look at moving reasonably quickly into the cloud. With all the changes the ATO has brought in, or the government has brought in, and the ATO has implemented over the past 12 months, with the need to report more often, the need to report more information, the ability to get information back into your software from what the government has, which we'll see in the next 12 months. There is a lot of stuff that is going to make it easier for people and more efficient for people to do stuff in the cloud. So I've got no doubt that if I look at this chart in a year from now, we're going to have another 50, 60, 70,000 funds in the cloud. And we're going to be looking at 470, 480,000 funds in the cloud, leaving really the cleanup of the last 120,000. Similarly, we're starting to see a move with corporate compliance as well. We've put 250,000 companies onto our CAS cloud software in 16 months, and we don't expect to do that again in the next 16 months. But if you think about it, that's about somewhere around about 15% of all companies in the country, and that's happened very, very quickly. So people are certainly taking up that technology. Can I go to the next slide, please, Nick? Thanks. And this is really all about automation, why do we keep talking about automation? Why do we keep talking about data feeds coming from banks and from all different places, from brokers, from wraps, from wherever you happen to be getting data from receipts, from all sorts of packages, depending on what sort of software you're using and how you're doing stuff. And the surveys tell us very, very clearly that the efficiencies are there. And we see it from our clients. I haven't gone out to measure it, and it is something we're actually planning to do. And you'll see some stuff from us coming out about that later in the year. But we look at the work the hours that it took to do something, and if it took 10,000 hours to do it in year one, by the time you get to year 2.5, it's taking about 7,000. By the time you get to year 5, it's taking about 4,000. So you're reducing your time by 60% by using the efficiencies of the technology to do stuff for you. And that's really where we're heading to. How much can be automated in the future? I know we're looking at a lot of stuff around artificial intelligence to get away from these data import rules or data posting rules that everybody uses, because we think the AI is smarter than the import rules, and we think we can do it better with the AI. We're already starting to see that, but there's a lot more coming in that space. How far are we away from having basically no touch general ledgers? So where the AI actually does the work for us. And you look at what Intuit are doing, you look at what Xero are doing with that sort of technology, and it's fascinating. And MyOb, I suppose, as well. It's fascinating where that's going, but in the end, are we going to have zero touch accounting? I don't know the answer, but we're going to get very close. We look at some of the surveying and other stuff that's been done, and McKinsey's did a report last year in the States, and they worked out that 86% of the work done by accountants could be automated today. So that's today, that's not in a year, that's not in 2 years, that's not in 3 years, that's today. So the technology is really starting to take over. The question, I suppose, is how are you guys going to implement these technologies to make yourself relevant to your clients? What do you need to do so that your client uses the technology to help you and help them have better information? If it's a client using a web-based accounting package, obviously they can get financial information straight away. Same with a web-based SMSF package, that's all available to people to see where their investments are, see where their member balances are. However, we're finding that very few clients are actually getting access to the software at this point, comparatively to the number of administrators that are out there. So I think that's really the challenge for accountants over the next and administrators in our areas, is to get their clients to have access to their software so that they can see what's going on, in our case with self-managed super funds, with their Xero ledgers, with their MyOb ledgers, with their Intuit QuickBooks ledgers, so they can see exactly what's happening. I think that's really the key to going forward, is how you communicate with your clients. And part of that comes for your clients to be able to help you to maintain those ledgers, or help them maintain those ledgers better for them, by having feedback mechanisms built into the software that they can maybe use through a mobile device or something like that to tell you about transactions, tell you about things that you don't know. So it's really giving your clients access to the technology, first from the point of view of getting their financial information, but then from the point of view of becoming a purveyor of information for them. So how do you have an application that is a place your clients go to get information not only on their accounting, but on their tax advice that they need, on any other advice they need, any help that they need. Maybe they need to know something about cash flow, whatever. How can you be this source of information for them? And I think that's the big challenge for accountants in the future. How can you become that one-stop shop to provide all that information and provide it in a way that your clients want to see it? Some of them will want to see it face-to-face. A lot of the younger ones especially will want to see it online. So that's the challenge, and that's where I'll finish off today, Nick. Thank you very much.
Ron, I just want to clarify one question with you. Was that
Sure.
that over 50% of firms are already in the cloud for SMSF software?
Yeah, almost over 60% now, I would say.
Okay, so that's obviously a significant shift to cloud. How many of those firms would you, on average, obviously with the ones that you with BGL have, how many of those would you say are actually being utilized to the full extent of the software?
Look, their clients are using the software to do the administration work. They're not letting the software out to their clients as yet, and that's really where the key is. So in terms of the features that they're using, they're probably using a significant number because the way the software is designed, we do find people don't know stuff's there, like they don't know we connect up with the registries, for example. So I look at the number of people who have that module, and I look at the percentage of those people who actually have pushed the button to get registry data into the software, and the numbers are really small. So people are using the main parts of the software, but they're probably not using a lot of some of the neater features that are in there.
Yeah, and that was the reason I asked that is for close to 10 years I was a financial planner, and I know that one of my biggest gripes with accounting firms, and hence I went into and had my own accounting firm, and obviously now we provide services to accounting firms, is that you're not able to give proactive advice to your client if the data is not up to date. That's one of the first things. But the second thing is then obviously giving your clients access to it so that they can then be more engaged with it, which then means you have more engaging conversations with them, which means that they ultimately will need more advice from you. So is that a common trend? Yeah, is that with the best firms that are using your software and maximizing it, are you seeing that that's how they're using it and leveraging it?
Look, we're certainly seeing some are. We're not seeing enough, but we're seeing some are, because we can sort of see who logs in and what sort of rights they have when they're logging in. So we sort of have some idea who they are, but we're not seeing a huge number of accountants as yet pushing the software out to either the planners, or unless the planners are internal, certainly not that much to external planners, certainly not that much to clients. We're hoping with some of the stuff we've released in the last couple of weeks, we improve that engagement, because we released last week the ability to get a client to tell you about a transaction. So they get a little thing on their phone and they can put in details of the transaction or load up a document, and that all comes back into the software. We're hoping that's the start of some better engagement, at least as a starting point.
So Ron, tell us a little bit. I know that you've recently released some AI in your technology. Can you give us just a little bit of a snapshot around what that AI does and how that benefits the firms using the software?
Sure. So what we've released at this point is stage one, which is the AI assistant. And what that does is it looks over the transactions in a fund, and it tells you with a confidence level whether you've posted it to the right ledger accounts. And the way that it works that out is we're sitting with about 250 million transactions in the cloud at the moment. So we look at those transactions, we look at the patterns in those transactions, and we give you a response. Now, what we find, however, is that the way that people handle data is different in different firms. So the way the AI engine works is it looks firstly at the firm data, and then it looks at the general data. So if the firm is doing something in a particular way, it will give you a confidence level based on how that firm's doing it. But then what we do is we go even one level further, and we have a look, how have you posted transactions in this particular fund in the past? So how are you posting them now, and is one consistent with the other? So that again affects the confidence level that we can give for transactions. But basically, I suppose what we found so far is that clients who have gone into the AI assistant, and the AI assistant's a button on the transaction screen, have had a look at it. On average, we found 2 transactions per fund have been incorrectly posted. So the numbers aren't particularly high, but it's certainly a starting point. We found one where there was 50 or 60 that were incorrectly posted. We find a lot where everything's right, but the AI has told us certainly over the funds that we've done so far, on average, about 2 transactions are incorrectly posted.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I'm excited by what the future of technology is bringing, but I'll just go back to that one point: is that if firms don't implement it to its full extent, then they're not getting the full value out of it. So we're going to run into a poll now. So Ron, thank you so much for your knowledge there. That's not the end of you today, but we will hear a little bit more. But we're going to run quickly into our second poll. So what is your main pain point for growth? Is it getting good quality staff? Is it capacity issues? You're too busy? Is it competitors? Is it lead generations and conversions? Or is it maximizing technology? So we'll run this poll quickly for a minute. So we're seeing, not surprising, about 30% good quality staff, 44% capacity issues and they're too busy. And that's where most of it's coming. And then we're only seeing, which is quite interesting, a small amount saying maximizing technology. And I think this goes back to my point, is that a lot of firms don't quite understand that the full extent of the softwares that they're using. So they're not particularly using them. So we'll end the poll there. And Ron, I'll ask you quickly before I ask Mr. Nixon. Do the results of that survey or that poll that we just ran, where 58% of firms, their main pain point for growth is capacity, does that surprise you? You might not be able to. So I might go to you, Mr. Nixon. So Rob, does the poll question or the results there surprise you?
No, not at all. You know, I've been in this profession for 24 years, working in 16 countries, and every year I hear the same thing. We can't get enough good quality people, right? And that's why, capacity is just too busy. There's tons of work out there to get, but can we deliver it? And what the topic of the day is all about technology. Can we actually get technology to deliver it where the human used to deliver it? So that's what I'd like to talk about when it's my turn.
Yep. So Rob, I'm just going to ask you one further question before we do get into your area. So the 58% have said in the poll today that the capacity issues and they're too busy. Now, is that because of, have you typically found that's due to not maximizing technology, or is it not having the right mix of staffing? What do you typically find the capacity issues are from?
So human nature, people fill the available time, with what work they've got to do, right? And let me give you an example of that, a personal example. I had to fly to Melbourne the other week from Brisbane, and it was a Monday morning, and Sunday night, we found out, because we live in the countryside, Sunday night, the gas was dead, right? No more gas, and we don't need gas to fuel the shower. And I'm thinking, crap, right? It's Sunday night, can't do anything about it. Monday morning, I do want to have a shower before I go to the airport to fly to Melbourne. How long did that shower take? Right? Literally, I was in and out in 60 seconds and still did the job. However, if I was just, laissez-faire in the shower, got no time delays, I could have taken 5 or 10 minutes. People fill the available time with what work they've got to do, right? And so we can be more efficient if we are to have self-imposed deadlines. And I find the reason that answer is 58% there is because people are not maximizing how we get a job done, right? Whether it be a technology process, whether it be a workflow management process, and counterintuitive it may seem, you actually don't have enough to do. Because the old saying, if you want something done, you give it to a busy person. And right now, we've got people in this profession, a lot of people in this profession, busy-ish, but they can be more effective and actually do far more. So I think it's a bit of a furphy. I think there's unearthed capacity, saying you're too busy. I think there's more capacity in what you've already got with your 5, 6, 8, 10, 50 people, whatever you've got.
Yeah, it's certainly, and look, there's some really valid points in that. And I was speaking to Ed Chan, the founder of Chan and Naylor, and he's very big into getting the right people doing the right work at the right time. And one of the things that he said is that when he goes through and works with the firms within his network and goes through what their capacity is, a lot of the time they think they're under-resourced, when in fact, when you start mapping out the workflow correctly, they're actually, in fact, a lot of the times over-resourced. But they're over-resourced in they've got the wrong amount of people doing the work, so they might have too many managers or senior staff when they need more people doing the grunt work. So it's a really interesting one, but we'll get into your section, Rob. So growing a firm, obviously there's lots of areas to a firm. So we're a firm that's wanting to obviously utilize technology, obviously wanting to fix their capacity issues, but they're wanting to make their business more by design as opposed by default. What are the critical things that they need to do?
All right, I want everyone to write down 3 words: fix, minimize, scale. So 3 distinct chunks, 3 words, lots of, and we're going to deal with this, by the way, in more detail at the August Roadshow, which will be great. But I'll just give you a bit of an overview here. I'm going to tie it back, Nick, to technology, because that's the topic of today. So fix, right? Fixing what's going on today. We look at the process of what's happening today with your current client base. Things like process of booking a meeting. Do you have a human book the meeting, or do you use something like Calendly to automatically book the meeting for you? Right? Get rid of the human. Things like, in fix, payments. How do you get paid? Does someone fill in a BPay thing, on a invoice that you've sent them? Do they send you back a credit card? Heaven forbid they send you a check. Or do you have all of your clients on a monthly fixed price agreement for their annual accounting work, and you put that through Stripe on a recurring payment, so it's all hands off, and it just links straight into Xero or MyOb or Clicks Online. Fixing, still fixing. What about writing a proposal or an engagement letter? Are you doing it in Word, or do you use something like Practice Ignition, for example, that will just automate that whole process? What about in fixing the way you manage client data? Is it on a spreadsheet, heaven forbid? Is it on a hard drive? Or have you got a CRM system on the cloud that you can operate from an iPad? Fixing, right? Fixing data operations. What about the way you take notes? Do you take notes on a pad and paper, interview pad, and then scan it in? Or do you take notes on an iPad or a Surface and automatically attach that straight to the client record? What about a meeting, right? You're doing meetings all the time. Do you have a phone meeting? Do you have a face-to-face meeting, or do you use Zoom, for example, for meetings? So all these little tech hacks, using technology to minimize the time, to fix what's going on today, to automate. And certainly when you've got an accounting business that has fixed price agreements, that has a fixed price for the project or an annual fixed price agreement divided by 12, then great, we've done that bit. Now we can minimize. Now let's have a look. How do we minimize the time taken to actually do the work? I was in Finland last year, Nick, and I was working with a software company over there and talking to their accounting firm clients. And I said, show me your software. And this is like the equivalent of MYOB, but 3 times the size. And they're in Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark. And they showed me their software, and what this particular, and this is what Ron was talking about, which is the hands-off GL. Their software goes straight from the barcode at the, let's say it's a retailer, for example, right? When the customer buys the product, barcode, a transaction happens. Transaction happens, goes into the accounting software, the balance sheet is updated, the inventory is updated, there's one less product of that, the client management system's updated, and so on and so forth. And then automatically, the accounting system's updated so the accountants get access to it. And automatically, the tax department, straight throughput of data all the way through. And they guarantee 50% reduction in time at the accountant's end, but they typically get 80% time reduction, as in the human is not touching the processing. The human is not rekeying. The human is not, processing the redundant data. They're actually dealing with solid data now, right? So the human element is drastically reduced, and we're minimizing time. Under minimize, We're looking at every single way to speed up the process. Workflow management. If you look at the function of workflow, we've got raw materials in, job created, job out the door. And typically, the reason it takes so long to get workflow done is because of missing information. So how can we automate that function? How can we actually think of workflow in minimizing time like a manufacturing outfit would think about workflow, right? When Elon Musk builds his Tesla cars, raw materials at the start, robots in the middle, product at the end. At the end, he doesn't go, oh, damn it, there's a wheel missing. No, there were 4 wheels at the start, right, before we got through the production line. So we're looking to minimize time on everything we do. I see accountants every day. They over-engineer jobs. Too much goes into it when we can take things out of it. Minimizing time when it comes to, let's get the client to do some heavy lifting here. Let's automate the process of bookkeeping. Let's get better cloud integration. Let's better business management, of the process of doing the work. Having autoresponders for missing information instead of hounding a client by the phone, by the text, by the meeting, whatever it is, missing information. Can we set up autoresponders to get all the data in? Minimize. So we fix what's going on today. We can use technology to fix. We minimize what's going on today, minimize time. We can use technology to fix that. Now we look to scale. Now we've got true capacity and we get the humans to really help their clients. Because right now, if an accountant is just doing processing work and writing up history, it's really not helping its client. It's been a report writer, which the machine will do the report writing for you, rather than helping the client analyze the data and make history. So we look to go to scale. We want to grow the business now with scale. We want to grow it with number of clients, with number of services, average fee per client, for example, and we scale. So enter. If we've fixed what's going on today, if we've minimized time right now, we've got true capacity, and we've got a slick operation going on, now we can grow the business. Now we can grow the business with target markets. We can grow the business with marketing. We can, I know with the way that I do marketing, I can get out a campaign to tens of thousands in 4 minutes flat, right? Because I use Gmail, GMass, and SendGrid, right? Using tools that are inexpensive. Scaling with an offshore team. Nick, that's your bag, but a big believer in that. Can we get people to somewhere else to help us scale? Using the likes of Slack for client and team interaction. I've got in my coaching business, I've got one full-time employee in the Philippines, and every single morning we do a Zoom meeting for about 3 to 4 minutes at 5 to 9, which is 5 to 7 full-time, and every day we're backwards and forwards chatting away on Slack, right? And we've got clients on Slack as well. So using technology, which is very inexpensive, scaling your business with social marketing, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, wherever they hang out. Just last week, I saw a product and just available in the US at this point in time, but this is what's going to happen in Australia. Absolute classic. What it is, it's an artificial intelligence that interrogates cloud accounting products in 8 seconds flat, digs into the data, and produces back to the accounting firm a 18 to 20 page management report with graphs, with diagrams, with commentary that you can put your badge on it and present that to the client. 8 seconds flat to do what used to take a day if you ever did it at all. What a cool value add, right? If you get your clients onto a monthly package and you say, by the way, it also includes a full-blown analysis of your financials every single month on where you're at and what you need to do, and you might charge an extra $250 or $500 a month for that, and you do it in 8 seconds. They don't know that, right? But you're presenting to them a report, or you do it in face, a tool, a method to deliver advice. So we're looking at going from, with all this technology around us, and there's just some simple examples, we're looking at going from the high-rise or office-dwelling accounting business to the backpack accounting firm. I can run this business on a backpack. I can be in a cafe, whip out my iPad, whip out my laptop, whatever it is, and I'm live, I'm active, I can run a meeting from there. Where are you at? Because if you're not there, then someone else will be and you'll get left behind. So fix, minimize, scale. If we want to grow our business, we've got to fix what's going on right now. We've got to minimize time so that we can grow and scale. Nick, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. Love those three words, fix, minimize, and scale. And I know that at our roadshow in August, for any of the listeners that haven't registered, I'll put up the information at the end, but Rob's going to spend over an hour with our clients and prospects talking around these three critical areas, because there's obviously a lot more than what you've been able to just cover off then, Rob. But yeah, I love it. I mean, particularly around the automation piece, you know, calendar, if you're not using a calendar booking system, what are you doing? I mean, engagement agreements like practice ignition, if you're not utilizing technology and then linking that so that it goes into a CRM, so that it goes into workflows and everything else, then you're really not maximizing technology. And you know, that scale piece about working anywhere in the world, we've had a couple of our clients recently, one of them in particular moved his family to Vietnam for a year. So he's got an office in Melbourne, he's got an office in the Philippines with us, where most of the production work gets done, you could say. And he moved his family to Vietnam to live there for 12 months because they wanted to have a different experience. And, you know, he wouldn't have been able to do this without technology, without obviously an efficient workforce and a global workforce, and without, I suppose, what cloud and the evolution of what cloud is doing. So I'm going to finish off today's webinar over the next 10 to 15 minutes talking about the right people with the right processes. And a big part of preface to this is really around, we see and speak to so many firms and they're getting the wrong people to do the wrong type of work. And what I mean by that is that we quite often see that we're paying corporate secretarials, one of them, and you know, I'm a big fan of any of those, the cloud technologies to do that, particularly the BGL one. And I was speaking to Daniel from BGL in Sydney a couple of months ago, and we spoke about, all right, what does the manual process of corporate secretarial typically take? So in the old days, and I could talk about the old days, it was only a couple of years ago, the manual process that used to take an hour or, you know, a couple of hours to do the corporate secretarial. But now with the technology that Ron and his team have been able to build, we're now seeing that the corporate secretarial process that used to take over an hour is now taking 3 to 5 minutes. And then you're implementing things like AI and everything else. We're really starting to see, and I have this one question, is corporate secretarial the most profitable division within your business? But often what we see is that on the people side of it, firms have got the wrong person doing it. So they may have someone within their office locally that's paid anywhere between $50,000 and $70,000 a year, driving what is mostly now an automated process that can be driven by someone offshore, and having the local person being more proactive with getting information from clients or altering their role. So we quite often see the wrong people doing the wrong tasks. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that today. So some of these mega trends we've already spoken about, but globalization, the question, much like Ron was saying, the majority of funds are now moving to the cloud for SMSF, or over the bulk of the industry is now in the cloud. We've also seen a huge amount of industry, particularly in Australia and New Zealand, that are now got global teams. The question 5 years ago when I was at, I went on the road with you, Rob, around, I think that was capitalizing on the cloud. It was a bit over 5 years ago, but the question there was who is doing offshoring or outsourcing, and very few hands went up. But now when you go to a conference and ask people who's doing it, it's almost who isn't doing it. So globalization is really changing the landscape and where we're operating. Cloud computing, again, we've seen the stats from Ron, we've seen the stats from all the major providers, Intuit, Xero, MyOb. We've seen all of the stats around where cloud computing has gone and where firms are moving, and most of them have moved or have some capacity of their accounting in the cloud. So technology is evolving and changing on a daily basis. I see some of these add-ons that are coming into the marketplace, and I mean, Rob mentioned a simple one before, just Calendly, but just being able to have people book into your diary without you having to be involved. I mean, my EA used to do a lot of that work for me. Now people can just click in, see my diary, see the availability, click in. Customer expectations is a big one, and this is where we really see that customers now know that the software is virtual. They know that they now have access to it. We can't hide behind our workflow anymore because it's virtual. People can now see whether or not we're on top of it, and they can see where we're at. But customers are now expecting things faster, they're expecting it cheaper, and they're expecting a better quality conversation. They're wanting to be able to access you 24 hours a day. So are you able to meet and exceed your customers' expectations in a really changing and evolving world? We've obviously got skill shortages, particularly in regional areas, and we see this throughout the globe, not just in Australia or not just in the US. And we're also seeing the cost of labour globally, the accounting world, the cost of labour is going up. And I see a large part of that is contributed to the fact that accounting firms are now needing a lot more technical and a lot more tech savvy people. So a lot of the roles that are being recruited locally are at the higher level and needing a broader set of skills and more soft skills, as opposed to when we used to recruit for accountants. And I remember having my firm many years ago, we would recruit graduates and we would train them through to become managers over a period of time. Now we've got graduates coming in saying, when do I become a partner? When I'm going to set up my own firm if I don't? There's a range of other challenges that come with this generation, and I manage over, our firm or our business TOA has over 850 millennials, so I understand the way that they think and the way that they act really, really well. And this is one of the challenges, is that a lot of accounting firms struggle with the mentality of the future generations, and it's not going to become any easier, and I'll say that one to you now. Now, we spoke about capacity before, and it's a common one that we find, is that people just can't keep up. And the biggest challenges they're having around this globalization and cloud technology advancements, people can't keep up with it. I know, Ron, at BGL, you guys are commonly bringing out new enhancements and new features, which is fantastic. But a lot of accounting firms are just not keeping up with those and maximizing them to their firm and their clients' I suppose, benefit. Customer expectations are changing, skill shortages, cost of labour. We've got all of these challenges and we've got mixed focuses. So where do we really focus our time? And this is where I'm going to talk a little bit more about before we finish off today, but I'm going to run a quick poll now around offshoring, just to see where everyone on the webinar today is at with this process, so that I can speak more directly to this. So have you already got an offshore team? We'll run this poll quickly now. Yes, we've already got a team. No, but we've outsourced some tasks, decided to do it, but not yet implemented it. We need more information, or you're against it. So quickly see the results. 25% already have a team, which is our clients that are on the call. Most of, obviously, you all have a team. So we're seeing around 20% have outsourced some tasks. 14% have decided to do it, but not yet implemented. I ran a podcast this morning with one of our clients, and again, implementation is one of the things that always comes up. It's great to have ideas, but if you don't execute, nothing changes. A large part need more information, and we've got a few people that are still against it philosophically. I won't go into that one today because I could go on to a tangent, so we'll keep it very focused around, obviously, utilising technology and how having a global team can obviously benefit that or assist in that. Quick one, running into another poll quickly. What concerns you the most about having an offshore team? I'll run this poll very, very quickly. Is it the language or cultural barriers? Is it security concerns? Is it technology challenges? Is it the time zone or quality of work? Not surprising, security is a big one, and I know that there's been significant security changes around policy. I know particularly in the UK, Australia's brought out theirs as well, and I know that US is pivoting towards that as well. Security, yeah, again, we'll talk about these another time. Quality of work. I had a really interesting podcast last week with one of our clients, and the quality of work was the biggest perception that they originally had before they were a client of ours, and now the quality, they understand that the quality of work going out is a firm problem. It's not an individual problem, but we'll skip forward from that. I won't talk too much about the benefits of that, but one of the things that I really want to talk about is more around where does a global team really fit within the accounting team structure? And a big part of this is around the right people doing the right work. And what we commonly find within firms is that the wrong work is being done by the wrong people. And I'll give you an example. So the podcast interview that I did a couple of hours ago, one of the things that firm owner's implemented, they've got 50 staff in Australia, is that he implemented an EA for himself. And when I asked him how much time does that save him, it's hard to quantify the true time savings that it has been, but he said that it, on average, is probably 1 to 2 hours a day that it is saving him by implementing that. And a lot of the work that he was doing was work that is low cost, could be done with a low cost. It's not efficient, and it's not where his 3 main skill sets sit. So he's doing the wrong type of work. So what I challenge you to do with all of your team members in your local team is actually write down what are the main tasks that they do on a daily basis. Then what I want you to do is draw a line and put another column. Of the tasks that they do on a daily basis, which ones of those do they add the most value? So do they add value doing those tasks, and does it need someone at their level to do those? In the third bucket, put all of the tasks that level of role within your business are currently doing but shouldn't be doing. And a large part of building a global team is not bringing on senior staff, it's pushing the work down in the initial phases. And it could be simply getting the super system set up. And I'll use an example. So we had a new client last year. They had 500 funds in a cloud software, and what they were doing is the annual returns through the technology. So they didn't have any of the data feed set up. They didn't have any of the bookkeeping getting done on a daily basis or the transactional admin work being done throughout the year. They were just simply using it as an annual event. None of their clients had access to it. So what their global team was brought on to do was to set up all of the bank feeds, which was relatively easy and straightforward, particularly with BGL. They do help, obviously, with the process and systems to do that, and it's really efficient with the technology. The second step is that they then got the transactions up to date for that financial year, and then they maintained that on a daily basis so that all funds were getting the admin and bookkeeping done on a daily basis. Those 9 funds are now done by 5 team members offshore who are now taking it from the start to the finish. From a tax point of view, and then the local team are reviewing and then presenting and advising the clients locally. So no longer are the local team having to get involved in the administration part of it or the admin part. It's all being driven by their global team. Corporate secretarial is a big one. 99% of the process can be done by someone, as it's a standard process and system, particularly with the new BGL software. I'm a big fan of the cloud corporate secretarial software in the cloud. I'm a big fan of the time savings that it has and the efficiency that it has. And it actually puts about 90% of the process into the cloud, meaning you can have someone in a global team logging into it. They can go from the start to 90% of the way through it. It's only the small element that actually needs to be done by your local team. Now, I had a new client a couple of months ago now. They had their revenue from the corporate secretarial division was roughly $900,000, and they had 2 people at large wages in Australia doing that. What they've now implemented is having 1 person in Australia maintaining and doing the higher level corporate secretarial, because there are obviously share transfers and there is complexity within it. But then the majority of the other role that's being done now in their global team is the actual 90% of the process for the corporate secretarial annual reviews. So they've been able to make this area more efficient. They've been able to make it more profitable. The role that they've freed up in Australia now is actually moving into a client experience role where they are now following up clients proactively for documents and information that is needed to be able to continue to do the advice. So they're shifting the types of roles that are getting done locally and moving it globally. One of the big things that we've found when we study, and we've got a data analytics team within our business, is that when we're looking at our clients and their growth and journey with their global team, we also track their growth locally to see if their local team is growing and if their junior staff are growing at a faster rate, which in all cases it is. So offshoring is not about reducing your workforce, it's about creating that capacity. And at the start of today's webinar, we saw in the poll the question around capacity being the biggest issue. And when you can increase your workforce and you can increase the capacity, and I'll give you an example. So you can employ 3 to 4 people in a global team in the Philippines, for example, with our offering. You can employ 4 people for the cost of 1 in Australia. So if you're looking to increase capacity in these, particularly for the Australian clients that are in this busy period right now, then having a 400% increase in capacity for the cost of one person in your local area is certainly going to benefit your firm, because then you can push work down. One of the biggest challenges that our clients have after getting into this process is that they actually have challenges in the bottleneck being locally being able to review and get the work out as opposed to it being produced. So it's quickly going to shift. So one thing that I really want to press upon you today is, are the right people doing the right work within your firm? Is there work that you could take from them and give it to someone else to make them more efficient? Now, I've seen research reports done in the last 12 months where, on average, accounting firms are spending, or an accountant is spending, a roughly 400 hours per annum doing administration. Now, if you could take that off them and have someone else doing that, that's 400 more hours at their billable rates. The second part of that I ask, and this is a big one when I talk to a lot of accounting firms, I ask them, are you getting 3 to 4 times revenue out of your accountants? Meaning, if they're costing you 80,000, are they doing billable work of at least 3 to 4 times that? Now, in a lot of cases, we see that firms aren't even recovering the 3 times. Now, if we look at basic business principles, we're looking at a third goes to the cost of the employee, a third goes to the running cost of the business, and a third goes to profit. But when we're looking at that, most firms can't even get 3 times revenue out of their income producing staff, and that a typical firm will have 5 to 7 income producing staff to 2 admin. How is the firm becoming more profitable? And that's where I really love Rob's 3 words that we talked about before: fix, minimize, and scale, because it's really focusing on the 3 areas that firms need to focus on to really start to maximize and grow their firms and make their firms more efficient. I'm not going to talk too much about the myth or truth, but outsourcing and offshoring, the biggest one that I want to cover off here is outsourcing and offshoring are different. Outsourcing is where you send a task or a project to someone to complete it, whether that be onshore or offshore, and they complete the job and send it back. Offshoring is where you build a team in a global environment, so in a different country to yours. Security, there's new security protocols being rolled out, and policies and being rolled out around the world. The UK has gone through some significant ones in the last few months. Australia's gone through theirs over the last 12 months. We're also seeing some changes and tweaks in the US one. Now, the reality is within a global environment, I'll ask you this question. So to get into any of our offices in the Philippines, we have full-time security personnel working within the office. We have cameras throughout each of the sections within the office. You can't get into any of the work areas without going through locked secure doors with obviously swipe cards. All phones, all personal items are left in lockers. They're not in work areas. None of the computers have USB drives. None of them have CD drives. No one has access to printing unless IT approve the print request. The security structure that we put in place is normally 10 to 20 times more than a local firm. I'll ask you this one question: how many of your staff in your office today have access via password access to any of your cloud technology that tonight they could go home and they could log into your system and print out all of the access to all of the clients within that information? Do you have, or do you have password protection software which allows your staff to only access those systems from certain IP addresses at certain times during the day, and they don't physically know the password to each of the applications? They only know it to the website where they log in and then click through to go to those other softwares. So how secure is your firm? Now, if we look at privacy legislation around the world, having a file or paperwork left on a desk at the end of the day and not in a secure cabinet is actually a breach of data legislation. How many of your team leave files or client records on the desk at the end of the day and go home? How many of them leave their computers turned on at night for the cleaners to be able to have access to? So a lot of the security personnel is actually down to the firm. What we find with a lot of firms is they actually don't have these measures put in place, and that they're really susceptible to these risks and data breaches, particularly with the way that the firms are run, and because in the past it's been okay. but in the future, it's certainly not going to be okay. So I'll talk a little bit more around what accounting firms do, but I'll wrap up within the next 5 minutes so that we stick on time. But what we're seeing leading firms are doing, leading accounting firms, is they've got a CEO who is a leader who's not on the tools. They're not buried in their computers. And I ask this question, how many hours a day are you sitting in front of your computer looking at the screens as opposed to on the phone or in face-to-face with your clients? Now, when we ask that question, most people say, the majority of my day, if not all of it, is sat in front of my computer. Now, is that adding value? In some of the roles within your business, most definitely they need to be. But managers and partners should be spending more time away from their computer than in front of their computer. But we see that most firms aren't that way. Are you having quality proactive time with your clients? Are you using cloud technology where the process, the people and technology is all sorted? Do you have highly engaged staff across your global teams? Do you have highly engaged clients and inbound referrals? And are you measuring that? Are you NPS scoring your client happiness and finding out if there is a problem so that you can address it before they just leave? And do you have a highly or strong profitable business with team growth? Some of our clients are even looking at starting 24-hour operations so that they can turn around things very fast. Now, we're not quite going to have time to go through too many questions. So if anyone has any burning questions, pop them through and I can get either Ron, Rob or myself to answer any of those that do come through. We'll just run one quick poll before we finish off. Just a quick, we're offering a free consultation to know how leading firms got started with an offshore team. So if you are interested in this, just pop in yes and we will be in touch with you. And for the rest of you, we will talk about the roadshow that we're doing in August, where we're going to go into a lot more of this in a lot more detail. So the August roadshow, I'll just close that poll off now. So if we didn't capture your information, we'll reach out to you. But I just wanted to invite everyone that hasn't registered for our August roadshow. We are coming around Australia, so Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Gold Coast and Brisbane. So we're going to, you can go to our website, theoutsourcedaccountant.com. If you go into the resource pages under Roadshow, the information and booking of it is there. Today was just a very, very quick snippet of what is going to be covered off in a full day event for our clients and a half day event if you're not a client of ours, where we're going to be talking around technology in a lot more detail. So Ron and Daniel from BGL are coming on tour with us to talk around technology and how this can really maximize and leverage within your business to get the most benefit out of it. We've got Rob Nixon. We're lucky to have Rob on the tour as well, to be going through those 3 key words that he spoke about: fix, minimize, scale, in a lot more detail, and really educate you on how you can implement the critical elements within each of those to make a significant difference on the back end of what your firm results are. The final piece about the roadshow we'll talk about is your people strategy. Now, when we talk about people strategy, most firms don't have a people strategy in place. So I'm going to be talking about in a lot more detail around how you can build out that people strategy and how having the right people doing the right work at the right time can really fix those capacity issues that firms have. So to quickly wrap up, please make sure, if you're not listening to our podcast already, we have one released every week where we have our firms that have been doing offshoring for a long time, for many years, and that are really nailing this. They talk about their experiences, what they did, how they did it, and what really makes their business different to others. So please jump onto our website and check that out. And we'll finish up right on time today. So before we finish, I'll thank both Rob Nixon and Ron Lesh. Really enjoyed your insights today, gentlemen, and really excited to be going on the road with you in August, where we can certainly educate a lot more firms around what we spoke about today. So thank you, Rob, and thank you, Ron.
Welcome. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to seeing everyone on the webinar today at our roadshow. So please make sure you register, and looking forward to seeing you in person in 4 to 5 weeks' time. Thank you very much for attending today. Now, please take something away and implement it, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And thanks again for spending an hour with us today.